Okay, we're going to have a little look at a different sort of flower. We did the little flower that I was messing around with at Christmas. This one is more, I think, it's perfect for doing with kids for Mother's Day or Easter. And what you're going to need, very simple, you're going to need a drinking straw. Now, my drinking straws have all got that bendy bit, so I've just put a little bit of decorator's tape over the bendy bit to stop it from being bendy. If you've got long ones, you can cut that bit off, but I just like my stems to be relatively a relatively good size. You're going to need a piece of fabric for your flower head, and we're going to be making tulips. And this is 2.5 inches high by 5.5 inches long, and what I've done is I've pressed it, and I've pressed a 1/4 inch hem on both of the long sides towards the wrong side. It's difficult to tell because it's the same colour both sides, but that's towards the wrong sides. I've cut a long piece of fabric. It's actually longer than my straw because I wasn't measuring the straw at the time, and that's 1 inch wide by the length of your straw, or you can make it a bit longer, it's not a big drama. I've folded in a 1/4 inch hem on one side to the wrong side, and on the other side, along the very edge, I've stuck a piece of double-sided tape. I've also cut these, and they're just roughly cut. It's just they're 2 pieces of fabric, and they're sort of a long leaf shape. These are approximately, let me just measure them for you, about 6.5 inches high, and at the widest point they're about 2 inches wide. So across at that widest point they're about 2 inches wide. There's no pattern for it, I've just free cut them, and you've got 2 pieces there. So what we're going to start by doing is with the 2 leaf pieces right sides together, and what I've got is a straight, oh, I've got a bit of fabric stuck to the back. I've got a straight edge at the bottom, you can see that, and I'm going to stitch all the way down and then all the way back, leaving that bottom open. So I'm just gonna, oh, you can't see me because I need to move the camera along a little bit. Just gonna do that. And normally I'd use thread that was matching, but I've got cream coloured thread in the machine, so that's what's going, because I just wanted to show you how to do this. And I'm stitching this at about a 1/4 inch seam allowance. You don't need a massive seam allowance on it. You could, if you preferred not to use fabric for the leaf, use felt, and you'd only need a single layer. Again, just cut to the shape that you want, really. Nothing's interfaced. So I'm just going to trim off that top point. And it's a bit fiddly, but I'm going to turn it in the other way. This is why you need to make sure that you leave a reasonable size gap at the bottom so that you can actually turn it, so that you've got that straight edge at the bottom is reasonably usable to be able to turn the thing. I'm just poking it through with the point of a pair of scissors. Just be careful you don't poke your scissors straight through though, ladies. We've all been there and done that, I'm sure. So I'm just gonna keep going until that's all the way through. I don't know what I've done with my pokey tool. I've got a pokey tool here somewhere. Oh, that one will do. It's not a pokey tool, it's a kebab stick, but you know, needs must. Until eventually we end up with a sort of a leaf shape, a tulip leaf shape. Tulip leaves are sort of long and thin and have a little sort of pointy top bit to them. Just be careful you don't poke the top right out. So once you've got that shape sorted, you can press that. I haven't got my pressing mat, so I'm not going to do that just at the moment. On your piece where your coloured bit, which is your flower piece, and you've turned those 1/4 inch hems over on both of the long sides, fold it so that it's right sides together, so the 2 short ends meet, and stitch a 1/4 inch seam allowance to join those together. Again, the sizes on this are sort of up to you. If you wanted to make slightly smaller tulip flowers on the top of your stems, then you could use a slightly lesser amount of, let's just get rid of me trimming the ends off, a slightly shorter piece of fabric. It's just relative, it's what you want. I'm just going to trim off the corners just to get rid of the bulk there, and then I'm going to turn that right sides out. So we should have a nice sort of a hula hoop, if you like, of fabric. So a little hoop of fabric with hems on both sides. Right, now we've got this long piece, which was the piece we've done our hem on, and the hem is over to the wrong side, and we've got our piece of double-sided tape on the wrong side as well. Now I'm going to fiddle about until I can get this tape off, because those of you that know me know that I don't like this stuff very much, and I do often struggle to get the covering off. That came off remarkably easily. I'm going to take my straw and I'm going to place it onto that piece of double-sided tape. So it's now stuck to the fabric, and you can trim off the bottom bit of fabric that you don't need if you've got a bit too much, like I have. I didn't measure it, I just cut it. And then all I'm going to do, I'm going to get rid of the threads that I appear to have. This is just a piece of very cheap green cottony polycotton stuff. It's not even decent fabric, but you don't really need decent fabric for this. Is I'm going to roll my straw within my piece of fabric so that the straw is now completely covered. I'm going to grab a needle and thread that, oops, let me just, if you've got really thick straws, so if you've liberated straws from McDonald's, which are much thicker, you will need a slightly bigger, I only use it in 1 inch because these are fairly puny little straws. If you've got McDonald's ones, or sort of a bigger gauge of straw, then you may need to make your panel a little bit wider. You could go up to 1.5 inches, it's not a big drama. So I'm just folding it over, and that folded edge is now on the covering over the sort of the gap, and I'm just going to literally, oh, that didn't do very well, didn't do a very good knot in the bottom of there. Let's do that again. I'm just going to slip stitch this into place. With cheap plastic straws like this can be a little bit fiddly because your straw does sometimes tend to bend. That's better. And it doesn't have to be fancy stitching. You're not actually going to see too much of it anyway. Or if you wanted to, you could just glue it in place, or even use another bit of double-sided tape. I just like to slip stitch it. I think I don't know why I do it, actually, to be honest. I did these for went into my daughter's school when she was quite young, and did these with them for Mother's Day, and the kids loved them, but we didn't sew much, we just glued mostly. So we're just going to slip stitch all the way up there. I'm going to pause this because you don't really need to see me doing that, and I will carry on once I've done my slip stitching. So pause. Okay, my straw is now completely covered, and it's not the best stitching in the world, but it's slip stitched. The fabric is now slip stitched to the straw. Right, now I'm going to take my pink flower piece that I started with, and I have a needle and thread, and through one side I'm just going to do a running stitch because I'm going to gather this. So I'm just going to do, I suppose these are probably about 1/2 inch stitches. I put a knot in one end so that it doesn't come unravelled. Okay, so I've just literally stitched all the way around one sort of side, one of the shorter bits where I've hemmed already. I'm just going to take my needle off of there. I'm just going to get another bit of thread because I'll need some more thread. Okay, so I've got both ends of that gathering stitch that I did. I'm going to take my straw and I'm just going to poke the ends of my fabric into the ends of the straw, which just finishes it off nicely. I'm going to put the side that's got the gathering stitch over the straw by about, let's say 3/4 of an inch, something like that. And I'm going to pull those gathering stitches. Now, you can stitch this in place if you want to, or you can do this with what you've got left of your thread where you've done your gathering. You can literally just wrap it round, then use your needle to tie in the ends, to just finish in the ends. This isn't quite as tidy as sewing it, but it's a lot quicker. And it's fine for kids. If the kids are doing it, they'll love doing this because there's not that much sewing. You can always get grandma to do the bit on the straw. Once you've secured that, you can trim off any excess threads and just give it a bit of a tweak if you've got any bits that are looking a bit like they're not very well sorted. So what I've got now is well, it looks a bit like a flower. And now I'm going to just take a little bit of wadding. Let me just grab my needle and thread again because I'm going to need that in a second. So I'm just taking a small amount of this, just a simple cheap polyester wadding, and I'm just going to push it in to the flower part, and you don't need very much. So now my flower is full of wadding, and what I'm going to do is where the seam is, I'm going to take the seam in one hand. I'm going to basically pull it so that I've got both of those seams together. Got hold of the part that's the other side. So the seam is here and I've got hold of the other side. But I'm going to take those two pieces into the centre and, oops, get my needle, and pop a stitch through them. Just if you've got a knot, just make sure the knot's on the inside so it can't be seen. Use the same coloured thread because this will be visible. Just pop a couple of stitches to secure those two pieces together. And you can see there that they're, if I open that side up, you can see that we've got almost looks a bit like a figure of 8. Now I'm going to take those two outside corners and I'm going to do the same thing again. I'm just going to pinch them with my fingers so that I know which bits are going in, and I'm going to push them into the middle where I did that bit of stitching. And I'm going to stitch them in place with that first piece of stitching that I did. Oop. And again, I'm just putting just a few stitches through, rid of the thread. And I'm just going to poke that wadding down into the tulip because we don't really want to see that. And what you end up with is a really sweet little, you can manipulate it so that it's sort of sitting properly, a really sweet little tulip head. I'm just going to very quickly press this and show you how to put this bit on. Okay, so I have my, I've pressed my leaf, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to lay my tulip onto where my sort of tulip sits, my leaf, sorry, where my tulip sits, and I'm just going to wrap it around the stem. This has got raw edges at the bottom. If you wanted to turn those raw edges in, that would be fine. I generally don't, and I'm just going to pop a few stitches just to secure that leaf around the tulip. Now, I haven't made a very good effort with this, it has to be said. You could take a bit more time than I have, but actually a vase of those looks just beautiful, and they'll last forever. And you have beautiful tulips. You can do them in any colour you like. Kids will love them because they're really simple to do. There you go, another flower for you ladies. See, we don't just do bags here. Excuse my croaky voice as well, because I've got a bit of a cold, so you have to forgive me for that.